You're about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. 1-877-DOC-DALI. So there's been a lot of anxiety among the hundreds of thousands of workers that work at the federal government because of the cuts that are being made. And I understand Trump wants to minimize, I think he signed an executive order to minimize the bureaucracy and to trim the fat off of the government and not have as many people on the payroll that are. And we understand that there is a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse. The problem is with the way it's being done, it is causing extreme anxiety. And there are a lot of individuals who are now worried about how they're going to support their family. They have a job. And when they are given notice, it's not much notice. That offer where you had to respond by February 6th if you were going to be late, if you did not want to return to the office, you could quit. You could be paid all the way through to September 30th, has drawn a lot of criticism because basically the individuals who were working from home and are planning to not work are going to be able to get paid through September 30th. But those who said, no, I want to work on site. I am working on site. I plan to still do my job and work for the government and support this country. They're the ones that are getting fired now, but without the, ability to still collect their salary till September 30th. So basically the people that got rewarded were the ones who were the work from homers. And so that's drawn a lot of criticism. And it's also drawn a lot of anxiety because we're hearing department after department, get ready for cuts, get ready for cuts. So the people who are probably going to be getting cut or the first group of cuts are the ones who are these probationary employees. Probationary employees are those who were just hired. Now, I've been in jobs where you were on a 30-day probation or a 90-day probation. In the government, it's a year. And so you don't have a lot of protection. You don't have, once you're in the federal government, it's hard to get fired until this administration where they're making cuts or making cuts. I understand there's a lot of legal challenges to what Trump is doing, but if you are a probationary employee, it's a lot easier to fire. These probationary employees are, though, a little bit of a gray area because some of these individuals have been working for the government at some point in their life, but their new position is a new position. And so what Trump is doing is if he thinks Biden quickly expanded the federal government right before he left office, then that's the hanging fruit. Those individuals that were quickly hired to expand the government, like the 88,000 IRS agents, whatever, then they're the ones that are the first to go. Last one hired, first one fired. The problem with that is there are a lot of individuals that don't know if they're probationary. They don't know if they are career conditional, or there's a bunch of different stratifications and classifications in jobs. Also, can you collect unemployment? What should you do? So this is what I recommend for any of you that are nervous about getting fired. Okay, one, it's not everybody. I think Health and Human Services has 5,000 probationary employees. Only 700 got fired. Now, still, that's a lot, but that wasn't all the probationary employees. So there is still a chance. Number two is, yes, you should be able to get unemployment. If you are canned, and it wasn't because you did misconduct or you did anything wrong, you should be able to file for unemployment. What I recommend is you get all your documents in a row. When you do get fired from the federal government, you lose your laptop, you lose your access. So anything you need, don't get classified information or anything like that, but anything you need for your own personal employment verification, make sure you download and get that. The other thing too is the EPA email that went out to EPA employees said, look, you're getting this letter because you're a probationary employee. If you're not, because either you've worked longer than a year or you're a veteran, respond back. So I would recommend making sure you have the emails of who is in HR or which government agency you work for. So if you do have to appeal, I understand there's not a lot of room to appeal, but the EPA email that went out, I don't know if you've seen that picture, it basically said, respond back if you're not a probationary employee or if you're a veteran, because it sounds like they're going to keep veterans. So there's a means to respond back. The only problem is if you are, from what we're hearing, some people, somebody online said they just couldn't access their emails. Their computer was shut down. So you need to then, if you think this is coming, talk to somebody and make sure they can help communicate for you, or at least get whatever emails you need in terms of which agency in the government you need to respond to in case this is an issue. What some people are telling me, some of my listeners are like, you know what? If I leave, I leave. I'm not going to try to come back. For some of you, you're like, I can't get another job. There's no other job. I'm 50 some years old. There's nothing out there. So if you're in that position, there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. From what I understand, the Department of Energy did layoffs and then they had to immediately rescind them because some of these individuals were working on, I think, nuclear projects. I think there were some people, the HHS, that got rescinded from their layoff because they were working on avian flu. So there is a chance that you could get hired back. Another thing is with the National Park Service, they have fired a bunch of people. But Interior Secretary Burgum had said, we're going to be hiring this summer 5,000 positions. So they're firing and then hiring. Now, I understand they're hiring seasonal because they want to keep government small. But for those of you who think you're going to be on employment for a year or two, there might be some seasonal hiring that you'd be able to have. So I would get your resume ready. I would make sure you understand if you're truly a probationary employee or not, in case you do have to appeal. And understand that Trump is all about making the government smaller. So some of these job losses are going to stick. 1-877-Daliah.
Hi, everyone. If you've been injured in an accident and think you deserve compensation, listen up. We have legal professionals standing by right now to answer your questions for free. They'll tell you if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth. Call 800-710-5100. I'm here with spokesman John Wolf. So, John, tell our listeners who should call right now.
Well, Maria, first off, thank you for having me join you to answer the listeners' questions. Now, as far as who should call in, anyone who's been injured in an accident and think you deserve compensation, give us a call right now and find out how much your case is potentially worth. Call 800-710-5100.
Thanks, John. You heard it, folks. If you think you deserve compensation, call now to find out how much you qualify for. 800-710-5100.
Advertisement sponsored by Legal Help Center. May not be available in all states.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems. For example,
diesel fuel cetane levels.
The cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
In a study, it was found that 33% of 44 herbal supplements had no trace of the advertised herb. Don't let that happen to you. Hi, this is Dr. Mitch. If you want to ensure quality, please go to TotalWellness.com. Supplements made for physicians only now available to you too. TotalWellness.com, helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. Daliah, 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer. And big thanks to you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Daliah, Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show, YouTube, click like and subscribe. And if you ever miss our show, go to drdaliah.com. So some of you might have seen this headline where a common medication that a lot of people are taking could also help cure you of your attention deficit. Take that with a grain of salt, but I'll tell you what's going on with this. It's a very interesting study. So there's a blood pressure medication called amlodipine. And amlodipine is in the class of calcium channel blockers. It helps relax blood vessels, which will help decrease one's blood pressure. A side effect of these calcium channel blockers, or amlodipine, a brand name Norvasc, is that some people, their vessels relax so much they get some swelling, some ankle swelling. But I got to tell you, it's a good blood pressure medication, and I find it very, very effective as long as you aren't having the leg swelling. Well, they're saying that this medication can also help with those who struggle with ADHD. Now, before you run out and say, oh, yeah, I got high blood pressure, give me that medication, this was a study done on zebrafish. So they studied zebrafish because according to Daily Mail and MSN, they share 70% of their DNA with humans. Well, that's really nice and generous. Anyway, so they have some pretty interesting similarities. And they found that amlodipine can combat nerve cells in the brain that fire too many electrical signals, triggering hyperactivity. Now, I have never seen a hyperactive zebrafish, but I'm sure there's a way to. Experts think this could be promising and maybe offer a safer form of treatment than what we have currently for ADHD. Most of our medications for ADHD are stimulants. And these medications are controlled substances, the majority of them. It's difficult to get online. You have to oftentimes check back in with your medical provider. We also like to examine your heart because they're stimulants. And so if there's a medication that is actually a non-stimulant and helps improve blood pressure, which very interestingly, I don't see people drop too low on that medication. So it might also be able to be used. You know how people are using Ozempic and Mounjaro, which are diabetic medications, but they're using them for weight loss, but their sugars aren't dropping rapidly? There are some medications that know how to manage and minimize risk of blood pressure spikes without actually dropping you too low. And amlodipine is pretty cheap. And so this might be something that could be interesting. So it relaxes, it dilates blood vessels, makes it easier for the heart to pump, and maybe that might help individuals with their excitability. So ADHD, this is interesting. Yeah, we've talked about the symptoms of attention deficit and hyperactivity. You know, do you have trouble concentrating on things? Do you have trouble multitasking? Do you forget things? Are you having trouble focusing? And then for hyperactivity, do you fidget a lot? Do you shoot out an answer in class when you're not supposed to? I do that. I was hyperactive. And it wasn't because of sugar. Just I knew the answer. And if I didn't know the answer, I just wanted to say it, you know, and show that I was participating because everybody around me was falling asleep and I didn't want them to get in trouble. So if I was like, pseudostratified columnar epithelium, no, we're not talking about that. That's different. Everybody around me would still wake up. So I had other ulterior motives to shout out the answer. Or if there was somebody really, really cute in class that I wanted him to notice me, I would shout out the answer. So it wasn't all hyperactivity. But we see that many of us struggle with some of our work and some of our tasks. And I think a lot of it is boredom. I think you have individuals with true attention deficit and true hyperactivity. But I do think you have a lot of individuals who are just bored, that rather catch up on Cobra Kai, right? Or that rather catch up on their Netflix, or that rather talk to their buddy, or that rather take a look and see what's going on with somebody they like on social media. And they'll start to struggle with work or struggle with school, and then they end up going to the doctor saying, to make me focus, when really they need therapy. They need some cognitive therapy to teach you how to focus. They need study skills. It's not easy focusing on a subject in school that you're not interested in. It's not easy to concentrate on a meeting at work, at work that doesn't really pertain to you. That is boring you to death. But we have to learn how to pay attention. A lot of parents tell me they lose their attention span on what their kid is telling them. Their child is talking to them. You only have X amount of years with your children, especially in the childhood stage. You think you would be hooked onto every word. No, they lose me too. They'll start talking about something and I don't know what the heck they're talking about. Or they'll say something and then my mind will wander to something that it just triggered a memory of. And then you find out that you didn't even pay attention to them. Well, you could practice paying attention. Shut off the computer, put the phone away, hands folded nicely in your lap, and look straight at the person. Another trick to do is to reiterate what they said. I had a crazy day at work. You had a crazy day at work? Tell me about it. Okay, now that kind of committed to memory. Well, this girl came up to me, and she said that, I was in a parking space and we don't have labeled parking spaces. Okay, now I would immediately start to think of some crazy person I worked with, and it would start bringing back all those memories, especially if any of you were traumatized by some of your prior jobs. So you would go back and say, wait a second here. So you were just at work. She comes up to you and says, you're in her parking space and it's not a labeled parking space. No. What's wrong with her? Well, she always parks there, so it's understood. And for me, it was the only parking space available, and now she's mad at me. So my answer would be, okay, well, this woman, just stay away from her. She obviously has problems. But maybe you come up with a solution. But a trick to losing concentration or losing attention is to reword it. So I'll read a book. This happens with reading. Many of us will read a book and we will finish the chapter or finish the paragraph and not even remember what that was about. Why? Because our mind wandered. There was something that was said that ended up causing us to think about something related to it. That's very natural. That doesn't mean you have something seriously wrong with you. That's very common. I mean, if you talk to a veteran about, apparently some of our troops were fired upon in the Middle East, you as a veteran are going to stop and think about when you were fired upon. That's very natural. But what you need to do when you're reading is go, all right, I'm going to concentrate on the sentence. Okay, I'm going to make sure I understand that sentence. I'm going to make sure I understand that paragraph. And if I have to reread it, I will. Now, what I used to do is take notes. My reading comprehension was okay. I mean, I got 1450 on the SAT, so I could do the work. But I noticed in medical school, it was just too much. Just so much information. So what I would do is I would take notes. So if there was something important, I would write on the side, pseudostratified columnar epithelium is pseudostratified and it's columnar, okay, or whatever, right? Or I would underline or I would highlight. Now, I noticed what the problem with the highlighting is I was ending up highlighting everything and then I couldn't sell the book back and I needed the money because those textbooks were ridiculously expensive. So I stopped doing that. I took notes on the side. This way, when I had to study for a test, I had index cards. I love index cards. And I think index cards are important. And for those of you who struggle with ADHD, Maybe you need to do the index card method or the Post-it note method where somebody's telling you something important. So write it down. That's why you always hear your boss or your parent or whatever say, write it down. Write this down. Because they know you're going to forget. And as we get older, we get more forgetful. Now they're looking at these COVID vaccines to see if they're giving us brain fog. I think also COVID, not including, maybe what the vaccine did, but viruses and other things can also give you brain fog. So as we age, we start to struggle with our memory. And so, write things down. But we'll keep you posted on the zebrafish and this blood pressure medication. 1-877 Doc Daliah. Dr. Daliah here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Daliah, 1-877 DOCDALI. So as we spoke about earlier this month and last month, how we're seeing a rise in shingles, whether it's because of the stress, whether it's because some of these viruses are activating and waking up our varicella virus. But I am really, really excited about our next guest who can talk about it a little bit more personally. We have Larnie, a nurse, shingles advocate, and mother who developed shingles when she least expected it, as well as Dr. Bio Curry Winchell, who's been on our show before, physician and health advocate. So grateful to have both of you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much.
We really appreciate it. So, Dr. Bio, if you don't mind, please review with our listeners shingles.
So shingles is caused by the virus varicella zoster. It's the same virus as the chicken pox, and so it lies dormant in our spine and can reactivate at any point in time.
So a question that a lot of my listeners have is they will say they have multiple. I had one patient who had it 12 times, and they had it once on their abdomen, once near their eye, once near their buttock area. Varicella would usually pick one nerve to lie dormant in, or do we notice that after your chickenpox vaccine, it could be in a variety of dermatomes?
Well, each patient, as you know, is very individual, and some patients have seen it reactivate multiple times. It typically presents on one side of the body, and it's associated with that painful, burning rash that normally starts off like just a little bump and blisters and scabs, and then just becomes this burning presentation. But normally, this virus, which can reactivate at any point in time, is the most common risk factor is those over the age of 50.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we have vaccines, luckily, for that age group. Talk to us about what we have for those over 50.
The important piece, as we kind of started with the conversation of we're all different with our health journey. So having that conversation with your doctor or with your pharmacist based on your individual risk for developing shingles, that can really set the playbook for what treatment, what plan of care is best for you in hopes of reducing your overall risk for developing shingles.
Larnie, you've been through this yourself, so you've experienced it, and it wasn't fun. Talk to us about your experience.
Yeah, well, thank you for this opportunity to share my story. And yes, I've had a personal experience with it. My family and I were headed to a much-awaited vacation to Hawaii, and on the plane, I noticed a growth on my left forehead. And during the duration of the flight, the growth grew more. And so by the time we landed, my husband and I decided to go to urgent care to get seen. And the provider at urgent care recommended I go to the ER at the hospital because the concern was not only was there growth, but it was also growing near my eye.
Right.
So it was near my eye, and so the team of specialists there at the hospital worked with me, asked me questions, and they diagnosed me with shingles.
And shingles of the eye could be very dangerous, could cause blindness. It could affect the ear in the form of Ramsay Hunt. And so there's a lot of complications. In the ER, did they have you do the IV treatment or the oral treatment?
Yeah, there was treatment that was given to me, and I just went through the course of it, and I was hospitalized for 7 days. Now, my case is not typical. However, one big major life lesson I did learn from getting shingles, which was, I was absolutely surprised I got it, or I didn't expect it because I consider myself young, active, and healthy. This kind of surprise to my health and my well-being not only has impacted me physically, with the scabs falling off and wondering, is it going to go away, but also on my mental health. And I worry if it resurfaces again.
Absolutely. Our vaccinations have evolved where now we have a much more effective one. Dr. Bio, can you talk to us about our vaccination that listeners can and hopefully ask their doctor and pharmacist about?
Exactly what you mentioned, having that conversation with your doctor or your pharmacist based on your individual risk is very important to make that decision when it comes to shingles. So taking the time, really thinking about what are your concerns, what are your thoughts around any sort of treatment, any disease is the first step in knowing more about your health. And when it comes to shingles, just having the conversation of your individual risk, especially if you're over the age of 50, is a great start.
Absolutely. Man, I love what both of you have shared. Another thing I want to also convey is sometimes you won't see the rash. You might have pain for days, left-sided abdominal pain, right-sided arm pain, and the rash might come later. And so if you are ever in a medical situation where the provider says, I can't tell what this is, bring up shingles, because that could be a possibility. And a lot of times shingles can be treated early on, even before the rash.
I love that you said that. It's very important to, if you have something and a condition and you're not sure, ask those questions. As well as when you go in and you're seen, have them take a look. Every patient I see, when I'm listening to your heart and lungs, I'm going to take a look at your skin as well. That opens the opportunity to diagnose if it happens to be shingles. That is a very important step.
Where can my listeners go to learn more?
EasyVax.com is a great resource to start to learn more.
Love it. Well, Dr. Bio, Larnie, we really, really appreciate you both coming on. Can't wait to have you back, and God bless.
Thank you.
1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Shingles is not fun. And I am blown away at how often it is misdiagnosed. And it's not necessarily the patient's fault or the doctor's fault. Is we have people that'll, the one of probably the most difficult cases is the left-sided chest pain, where somebody is having severe left-sided chest pain. And we have to rule out heart. We have to rule out a collapsed lung, pneumothorax. We have to rule out pneumonia. And you get the cardiac testing, you get all this testing, and you don't know why it's hurting. And doctors are like, but you're clear. I would always recommend, there's a blood test that could be done. It's called the varicella IgM. And there's the IgM and the IgG. IgM is an antibody that will surface within the first 30 days of an infection. IgG are your antibodies made that are lifelong. So if you ever had chickenpox, you will have varicella IgG antibodies in your body because varicella is the virus that causes chickenpox. But if you want to know if you're having an active infection, there's an IgM, which are the newer antibodies that will come up within the first 30 days and then go away. So if at all there's doubt and you're like, they can't figure out my chest pain and they've ruled out heart causes and pulmonary causes, or they can't figure out my abdominal pain or my leg pain, but it's only on one side, ask them to check you for shingles. Now, this post-herpetic neuralgia is what scares a lot of people. Because some people say, Dr. Daliah, shingles isn't going to kill me. If it's on my leg, I'm not going to go blind. Why do I have to worry? Because sometimes that pain and burning can be lifelong. Some of us are lucky and it goes away in a few days. But for some of us, we will be cursed with it. And a way to help prevent that is one, vaccination, but two, to get treated early on. So you see the dilemma. If you're having leg pain and you haven't been you don't see the rash, the doctor doesn't see the rash, it doesn't get treated. Now, all of a sudden, day 5, 6, 7, the rash comes on. You're already deep into the eruption. So the sooner this gets diagnosed, the better. And obviously, the better we could prevent it, the sooner we could prevent it, the better. So I'm glad we had our guests. I wish they could stay longer. But any questions, keep them coming. 1-877 Doc Daliah.
Hi, everyone. If you've been injured in an accident and think you deserve compensation, listen up. We have legal professionals standing by right now. They'll tell you if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth. Call 800-910-7500. That's 800-910-7500. Call now to find out how much your case could be worth.
Advertisement sponsored by Legal Help Center. May not be available in all states.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems. For example,
Diesel fuel cetane levels.
the cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
Self-reliance. It's not a phrase we hear much in our culture these days. It might conjure up images of pioneers, the West, rifles, strapping men, and strong women. But what does it mean for us in today's world? The New American Magazine has just released its latest collector's edition, Self-Reliance, Foundation of Freedom. In it, the New American authors outline the necessity of self-reliance for a free people, tips for self-reliant living, and the importance of not giving up hope. This unique edition includes articles on the self-sufficiency of the founders, preparing for a worst-case scenario, firearms, financial self-reliance, the importance of community, and many other topics by expert writers. Now, for a limited time, the New American is offering a bundle of 3 collector's editions, Self-Reliance, The Great Reset, and Trump World, for just $19.95. Available at shopjbs.org. Visit shopjbs.org today.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Doc-Dali, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So a question that has persisted now for decades is, who killed John F. Kennedy Jr.? What happened? Who was involved? Was it really solely Lee Harvey Oswald? And for those of us who have learned about this and watched the documentaries, and I actually watched most of my opinions on the matter came from watching the news reporting with Walter Cronkite. It's Walter Cronkite. It lasted about, I think it was about like a 2.5 hour video going through the discussions and the information that was being fed to the media about it. And that was really enlightening. If you want to kind of come up with some of your own opinions, I would watch and listen to that. Now, maybe it's because I'm in the media, so I understand when there's pivoting and when, well, we need to give a statement to kind of keep people happy. But it's when you watch that video, and I'll try to repost it. Let me find it again and repost it. It starts out with the footage, very tragically, with what happened to RFK, but it started out with the soap opera that was on at the time. And then Walter Cronkite comes in with with breaking news that there was an injury that happened to RFK Jr. They made you think that, JFK Jr., that JFK was alive still, and that he was going to be taken to the hospital, and they were going to give him IV fluids and work with him. When what we learned later is he was dead on arrival. And it was just horrifying to see what he went through. And as I watched the videos and the footage, and you've seen multiple people counter what was being told, where it was a single shooter from the nearby library, the book depository, and Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. And people said no, because where he was shot had to have come from a different angle. And it was such a horrific scene. But you see Jacqueline Kennedy, his wife, immediately jump and try to get out of the car. Now, my mom told me that what they were told was she was trying to get Secret Service help to get him some attention and some care. That's not what the video showed. The video showed she saw what happened, where sadly, his face was blown to bits, and she was getting the heck out of there because there were fires shot. And the Secret Service said, get in the car so they could go to the hospital, get in the car. And they were right there by the on-ramp to get to the freeway, and then to be taken to the nearest hospital. And so what the media and what conveyed to people in the 1960s is a lot different than what we're seeing now. And there's been a lot of theories postulated. Was it the mafia? Was it Cuba? Was it Lyndon B. Johnson? The Lyndon B. Johnson connection was probably one of the most sought after theories, because he was not friends with JFK. He actually ran against him, during the primary, as many do. He ends up being nominated as his vice president, or he ends up being then appointed to being his vice president. And during the footage on that fateful day in November, you hear them say, thank heavens, or thank God, that Lyndon B. Johnson's motorcade and their car slowed down before this happened. And it was a miracle, they said, that Lyndon B. Johnson's car slowed down, or they could have been killed as well. Now, of course, people then ask, well, then why did their car slow down? Did they know? And so Lyndon B. Johnson was one of the first to be looked at, but then he was immediately inaugurated in as president. And so that was debunked, and nobody thought it was him. Still, some people still feel that there had to have been some connection to that. And it's just awful. It is just awful to know that, our commander-in-chief was murdered while he was driving on a beautiful day in Dallas, Texas, and that there were people that were gunning for him. But when I watch the videos, whoever did the shooting, they, yes, I understand they got the governor who was sitting in front of them, but there were bystanders, there was Jackie, these were some direct shots. Another interesting thing to note is he was shot twice. JFK was shot twice. And the first shot, he was still alive, and he slumped over But he didn't completely slump all the way to the ground. He was sitting upright. Why? Well, we believe he was wearing a back brace. He suffered from Addison's. He suffered from a lot of chronic back issues. So they believe he was wearing a back brace. Well, that back brace and back braces back in the 1960s were pretty rigid, which means if that first shot in the neck would have thrown him over and he would have, fallen in front of him in his seat, that second fateful shot might have never gotten his head. But he was wearing a back brace that kept him upright. And then sadly, the shooter had access to his head. Just horrible. Horrible, horrible. Now, interestingly, the news is telling us that a former Chicago mobster is taking credit. James Files, and this isn't the first time he's spoken out, but he's 83 years old now, and he claims he's the one that fired the bullet that killed Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963. He said he was behind a fence on the grassy knoll overlooking Dealey Plaza in Dallas. But the other shot that struck Kennedy was by a second individual, Charles Chucky Nicoletti. He was hiding out in the book depository, the same place Lee Harvey Oswald was accused of being in. Now, Lee Harvey Oswald didn't get a chance to tell his story because Jack Ruby killed him while he was being being transferred from, I believe, one jail to another. So any of us who, have watched movies and we know something's rotten in the state of Denmark. We know something's up. But Files says he and his team of mafia hitmen were recruited, were trained by the CIA, packed up their weapons, and fled the scene seconds after the fatal shot was fired. He claimed to have killed him back in the 90s. Now, he was in jail for the attempted murder of 2 police officers. So when he spoke out in the 90s, people didn't listen to him. But I remember in the 90s, that's when they started to look at, there were 2 shots, and they might have come from completely different angles. And was it really the book depository? And then, mathematicians and physicists tried to evaluate that. And so Trump has signed an executive order. He did that early on to release the remaining classified records of RFK Jr.'s uncle, JFK. And Files is still saying it was him. But he says the government tells a lie. They have to live the lie. He says, I don't think Trump will get any further than what's already been disclosed. Alleging the CIA has lied to the American public for 61 years is not suddenly going to say, we're sorry, we lied to you. And that was something that I was thinking about. If the government did want to hide the true assassins, they wouldn't keep a copy of that information. It would have been destroyed. So, wow. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH. Don't go away.
Did you know that healthy arteries make a gas? Yes, actually 3 known gases. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch, and nitric oxide is a gas that's readily made all day long to keep our arteries open by relaxing the blood vessel walls. By doing this, our circulation is increased, bringing blood, oxygen, and nutrients to every part of your body. Both age and poor diet can lead to a loss of this precious gas, and in turn, blood pressure can go up, energy can go down, and you can get tingling in your hands and feet. Well, our product, Ultimate Nitric Oxide, can easily help fix this lack of nitric oxide. Go to TotalWellness.com. That's TotalWellness.com, where we are helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.